How's it going, everybody? So over the next couple of months, if everything goes according to plan, I'm planning on building one of the coolest projects I've ever done. But if I screw up and do something catastrophic, I could literally die from it. I'm not joking. Now, if you've watched me for any amount of time, you know that I'm not much of a safety person. I have a lot of people in my comments always telling me that I'm doing everything wrong and in the unsafe way, and I kind of brush off most of them. It's fine. You do what you want to in your shop. But I'm also not stupid. And so in this project, I want to look at a couple of issues that I'm going to have before they happen. And one of the things that I don't like is this switch. This switch is going to determine whether the machine is on or off at any given time, and I don't like the idea that this thing can be easily bumped and turned on when I don't want it on. So I'm going to be building something that is commonly referred to as a paddle switch. Now, usually a paddle switch is something you can buy as an aftermarket part to add on to any of your machines to make them a little bit safer. It makes the switch almost impossible to turn on by accident, but really easy to turn off in the case of an emergency. Now, of course, you could just go onto Amazon and buy one, and if you're interested in that, I will put a link in my description to one that you can buy. But since I like to make things, I'm gonna make mine. Just kind of for fun. The first thing I did was cut the front piece that would eventually become the paddle, and then I cut two squares. The first square piece will hold the switch, and the other one needs to be cut into 4 supports that make up the hinge. So I wanted 2 pieces to hold the switch together, and this first piece that holds the supports is also going to serve as a positive stop so that the switch itself won't rotate. So it needs a rectangular hole cut in it. The second of the 2 pieces that holds the switch together just needs a hole drilled in it, but first I need to cut it down to size so it fits in between the supports. Instead of drilling the hole first, I decided to connect the 2 pieces together so that I can make sure that it never becomes misaligned and the switch will fit appropriately. I also decided to use Titebond 3 in this project because I cannot have this fail, and because there's a good chance I'm going to be using this switch outside, it needs to be as waterproof as possible. I didn't actually measure where this hole needed to go, I just drilled directly in the center of the rectangle, and it ended up working out very well. The points of these triangles need to line up exactly with the center of the switch, and so I decided to throw the switch in to help me align everything. But it really turned out I didn't need to put the switch in, I could have just aligned it with the holes, but I think it helped. And then I can use that to mark where I want the hinge point to be. Ignore the mark I actually made because I ended up changing that anyway. This cheap drill press has gotten so old that it actually has a slight forward angle on the table, so I have to keep spinning my piece to make sure it drills a 90-degree hole in the center of all my pieces. And then these pieces can just get glued and pin nailed into place. I decided to use pin nails in this project because I was worried if I used brad nails I would start splitting the plywood. And here is where you can see that I magically moved the holes to a different location, and then I could just sand everything down in the disc sander. I decided at this point I needed to switch over to the paddle switch side of things to make sure I could get everything perfectly aligned, and then later on I can go back to finishing up the switch side of things. I just used the table to square everything up, and then I could take everything back apart so I could work on the pieces individually. Similar to the switch side, I needed to add a spacer so that the hinge pieces have something much more substantial to hold onto the paddle. The last thing you would want is for this thing to break during use. Once again, I'm using a very generous amount of Titebond 3 and pin nails to put everything into place. Having all this squeeze out into the hinge pieces also means those are being glued on as well. I did come back a little bit later and put some pin nails through just to make sure everything was nice and solid. The next part I need to make is the tiny little wooden piece that flips the switch, but only in one direction. Okay, now here's the rub. Most of the time whenever I build a project on this channel, I'm trying to do so that you guys can be encouraged to go out and build something similar in your shops. However, in this project, I'm going to tell you, please, for the love of God, don't build this project. And that is because of this little piece that I'm trying to build right here. I really thought this piece was going to be a bit simpler, so I had a process down of how I was going to build it in a way that was going to function perfectly. But when it really came down to it, it took probably about 2 hours of fiddling with this piece until I got it to work properly and reliably. That's the thing. If you have something like an emergency off switch, it has to work reliably, and that's what I was having a hard time doing this. It turns out that what I really should have done was drilled a hole at about a 10-degree angle and then cut that and sand it into place, and then I could just glue and tack that in the correct location. But I actually installed this thing about 4 times before I got it to work reliably. Unless you're designing something like this in CAD first, I really don't know how you would know what shape to make this part. In the end, I was able to make this part work perfectly on mine, but it's not something I would suggest doing. So if you want one of these, I highly recommend just go find one to buy. I am going to put a link in the description to one that you can buy. It's highly rated. It's over on Amazon. And if you want one of these, just go buy one. I would not suggest attempting to make one. Now I can cut the paddle side down to the proper dimensions, and I also use this as an opportunity to start making the housing for the bottom of the switch. The housing is really just there to contain all of the wires. And of course all of this just gets glued and tacked into place. You're playing measure?
No, like this.
You're playing with a tape measure?
Yeah, tape measure.
Okay.
The heater not on.
No, I turned the heater off so we could hear you. Because I like listening to you.
I like listening to you. Thank you.
You're so sweet.
So sweet.
You're so sweet.
No, you're so sweet. Do you have a glue second?
We have a what?
The glue second.
You want the glue? Alright. Let me put some glue on this and you can have it.
Yeah. And you need to take turns.
Can you say tight bond?
Take that.
Tight bond.
Take off.
Now it's time to screw the back plate on, and all this is for is so that I can screw it onto the machine later, but it also helps to contain all of the wires. I'm only screwing it on because I want to be able to access the switch later.
Oh, this is not working. I need paper towel. I just make a mess in here.
And then I can put the mounting holes in. And then I needed to round the corners for the front paddle section, and I decided just to do this on the disc sander. I also use this as an opportunity to flush up all of the parts of the switch. Then what I decided was that I needed to drill 3 holes into the switch. One here is so that I have a place for the wires to go once the back cover is on. And then I needed 2 countersinks so that I could hold magnets later, and these are just so that the switch can be held in position and the weight of the paddle is not resting on the switch itself. Now it's time to paint the pieces, and I wanted to do one piece red and the other one green, but what I had in the shop was a forest green and a balloon red, and those are actually closer to Christmas colors. So instead of a red light, green light look, it kind of ended up looking a bit more festive than what I was looking for. And then I could use a paint pen to write the word off on the front of the paddle switch, and this is just to make it incredibly obvious to anyone who's around the area what the switch is for. And then I could put several coats of varnish over the top of this. The varnish is there partially just to make the pieces look nice, but it's also there to act as just one more barrier between any kind of rain that I might get caught in and the seams of the switch. I'm not willing to take any chances that this might fall apart on me. And now it's time to put the magnets into the holes that I drilled earlier, and these can just be hot glued into place. It's always a bit difficult to show wiring on YouTube because you can never see what I'm doing because the pieces are so small and my hands are always obscuring the view. Basically all I did was I connected the neutral wires together and the ground wires together, and then the hot wire I ran through the switch. And then I could use the Hink Street tubing to make the connection a little bit more firm. And then I could use these quick disc connectors for the switch. I'm going to be putting a link in my description to the switches that I use and all these little connectors down in the description. I wouldn't recommend tapping on the switch the way I'm doing here, but I was being very careful and it really didn't want to go into place, but it finally did pop right into where it needs to be. Probably should have drilled that hole a little bit wider. And then I put a little bit of wax on the inside so that I can put some bolts on. Hi, can I help you? Can I help you?
That kind of like a pole.
That looks a what?
Kind of like a pole.
Like a pole?
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's kind of like a pole.
Okay, well I gotta finish my voiceover, okay? Mwah. Alright, go play.
Okay.
To make sure that the nuts and bolts never ripped through the plywood, I put some washers on the outside and the inside of the piece, and then I had to put a nut on the inside of the mechanism, which proved to be surprisingly difficult. Okay, so I've only given myself one hole for one cord, but this really needs two cords going in and out, so it really should have two holes. Also, I've already wired my two cords together on this side, so that doesn't make any sense. So what I really need to do, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and remove this material. Oh, I hope I got that switch oriented right. I could have put that upside down because I wasn't looking. Oh no. Yes! Oh, thank God I didn't get it backwards. Okay. I got lucky on that one. Oh, that's so cool. And then emergency off. Alright, thank you all for watching. Like I probably already told you in the voiceover, this thing is so much fun to build, but it's really not something you should think about tackling. If you want something like a safety switch, you really should just be buying one. And I'm going to be putting a link in the description to one that I found on Amazon. Now, I've never bought it, but it comes with high ratings, so that's the one that's going to be in the description if you're interested. Now, I am really excited about this project because this is actually the first video in a series of videos that you're going to be seeing coming out on my channel over the next month or so. I'm going to be building a machine that I have absolutely no business building, but it's something I've been wanting for over 15 years now, and I finally have the opportunity to build one. So if you want to see that, don't forget to subscribe so you can follow along with me. Also, I'm probably going to need a little bit of help in the comments for things that I don't know how to build. Hopefully by the end of the process, I'll know how it's built. So if you want to follow me along in that process, don't forget to subscribe. That's going to be happening over the next month or so. Also, if you're watching this video in the future, I'm going to be putting a playlist at the end of this video and also in the description of all of the videos so that you guys can see all of the videos in one location. Well, anyway, thank y'all for watching. Catch y'all next time. Go make something. of it.